Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending what time zone you're in. Welcome again to another one of CRM Dynamics webinar. I'm your other host today, Angelina Jacobs. As introduced, I'm one of the consultants here. Feel free to take down my email. I always try to answer any questions that come in after, whether they're related to this webinar or just CRM in general. Feel free to drop me a message and I'll do my best to respond in a timely fashion or send you off to the right person who can help you out. So today we're just going to be talking about customizations. We've done similar things in the past, but as the product evolves, obviously so do the customizations and the functionality and capabilities available to you. So we do want to talk about the what and why and the benefits of customizations. So of course, when you're customizing, you are modifying the system, but it's to meet a specific need. So it can offer you a tailored experience, more relevant to your business process, the business needs. And really what you're trying to do is extend the out-of-the-box functionality to cater that more towards your company or organization. Some of the common uses, of course, entities, fields, the forms, views, charts, dashboards within there. You can get into some of the automation as well and the processes, so those business process flows or BPFs as you see on the screen, and then workflows or Microsoft flows. And that is one of the things I will mention at the end when I go into the processes is some of you might be very familiar with workflows, but you may have heard about this new functionality out, and it's called Microsoft Flow. So I'll show you how that should start to look in the back end, because they'll be moving away from those asynchronous flow workflows in the system and gearing you more towards using Microsoft Flow, because it comes with a lot more capability, a lot more connectors as well, so it's some really cool stuff. And without further ado, I will jump right into a demo. So up here, I just have a sandbox demo version for you. I'm in the Sales Hub right now. Some of you might be familiar with this and the unified interface, which is the new user interface from Microsoft. It's a bit cleaner, a little more catered towards the business team, you know, with your sales, service, or field service. So right now I'm in the Sales Hub. Some of you might have the Customer Service Hub or Field Service. It's all relatively the same. You get at the customizations in a very similar fashion. You might be familiar with the home screen I'm looking at now with the dashboards. These ones are the system dashboards, so these would be available to all users, but you also can create those personalized dashboards as well. I'm going to just go into some of the form, field, and view customizations, because these are kind of the starting points for anyone who is looking to customize their CRM. You'll notice in terms of navigation that there's a bit of a change between the unified interface and what some people might still be on the classic web version. If you're not too familiar with this, there is a past webinar available on our YouTube channel where I've gone over the unified interface. So please check that out just to get a little more familiar with it, because this will be the interface going forward, especially for anyone who's new to CRM, and then any upgrades that will start coming in the future. The classic web version will eventually go away. So instead of the navigation at the top, you've got the navigation on the side here, and then you've got some options available to you here as well. But if you're going to customize, as most administrators will do, we're actually going to be somewhat in that legacy system. And to do this, I'm going to go to the gearbox at the top. This is where you could do your personalization settings, but there's also advanced settings. This screen will hopefully look familiar to a lot of you because it is that classic version with the same type of navigation from the top here. So some of you might be familiar where you had all your modules up here. So the settings still hasn't quite gone over to the new interface, but that will be part of the Power Platform. So that's another thing I'll just quickly mention because it's a whole other topic, but there is this thing called the Power Platform. It includes, you know, things like your Power Apps, Power BI, and there'll be a new administration interface. So similar to other versions of CRM, to get into the customizations, you're going to the settings and you're going to customization. There are two possible options here. If you go to customize the system, what this does, it's going to open up the default solution, and that means it's everything included in your CRM system. So that is one way you could do some very quick edits if that is how your organization does this, but we usually recommend creating a custom solution that contains only the edits that and customizations that you'll be doing specific to whichever entities, forms, fields, etc. So I'm going to go into my solutions and I'm going to create a brand new one for this. For anyone who has access to this, there's probably a lot of solutions that'll be in here. Some of these are also just part of the Microsoft and Dynamics 365 solutions. So you'll notice I have a lot of managed ones, and this is just because of all the add-ons that come with the CRM now. So don't be afraid if you do get into this list and there's a bunch of stuff you're not familiar with. It's just because of the other modules, the AI, we got predictions in here, we got voice of the customer, all these new products that are available with Microsoft Dynamics 365. I'm just going to create a brand new solution, and this will look pretty much the same if you opened up the default solution. One thing I do want to point out, since I mentioned the Power Platform, is when you go into your solution manager here, I'm now on a Power Apps. So this is one of the changes that have come in the last couple years, and you'll notice that when we start moving more towards the Power Platform administration, it's because we're actually building Power Apps now. I'm just going to give this a very generic display name. If you are doing specific things, whether it's for a certain project or just for a specific business unit, whatever you can to make the display name give as much information to the administrators of the system, that's the best here. I'm only going to be doing some edits, I believe, to accounts. So I'm going to say accounts. You'll notice it gives that name, schema name automatically. The publisher, all systems do come with a default publisher. You can also have your own, if I were to put CRM Dynamics in here, I could. I'm just going to put default, and that should suffice for most companies. And then version. So I'm doing the first version. That's the other nice thing with creating your own solution is you can have version and change management control here. So I can do my initial customizations. I might move that from a sandbox to production, but then there's some other edits that need to be coming in. So I do some more customizations. I could use the same solution, but I would update the version number. And then that way I actually have a distinguishing factor between what was in version 1 and then what was in version 2. And then we can see how that is imported then into a production system, for example. So you can have good version control using the same solution. I'm just going to say as a description, minor edits to account entity. And again, I'm just giving as much information as possible within here. I'm going to save it so it at least creates that solution for me. And here's where I have to either create new things or add existing ones. So creating new, I could actually create a brand new entity if I wanted to, and then create all the forms and views and fields. Or I can add an existing one that's already in the system and make my edits and customize from there. So I'm actually going to add existing, and you can see the options available here. I'm actually going to add the account entity, so I'm going to entity, and it's going to give me a list of all the entities available in my CRM. Account is number 1, which is great. And go OK. Now it's going to ask me what I want to bring in that's included in the account entity. I can take everything if I want to, which is no problem, but to have a very clean solution where I'm only editing the things that I need to, I might as well customize this a bit too. So in terms of forms, I only want to bring one form over, which is the account form, which is right here. This is the main account form I use, so I'm clicking that. In terms of views, I could bring all these over, especially if I didn't know which ones I was going to edit. I could also add these after the fact too if I forgot something. But for this time, I'm just going to add active accounts for now. I could add charts. I could add additional fields. So if I knew I was making customizations to existing fields, I would add them here. I can also add it after the fact. I don't really need to add any relationships or business rules for now. So I'm just going to go finish, and it's going to add that to my solution. So now I can see I have the account entity. Also here on the left, I can expand the entities. I now have account, and this should look similar to anyone who's done customizations in the back end and even opened up that default solution. Same thing right here. Instead of listing all the entities in the system though, I now just have one to deal with, so it's a lot easier to keep track of. So I'm going to make some edits to the form. Before I do this, I'm going to go back to my CRM just to give you a preview of what things look like currently. So I'm just jumping back to my browser. I'm going to go in to my CRM, and I'm going to go to my accounts. So accounts entity, of course I'm met with my default account view, which is active accounts. And let me just open up a sample here. So this is the account form. And I know which form it is just by looking at the top here, so that account. So I added the right form to my solution as well. And let's just say I'm looking at this and, I don't really like how there's just white space here. Maybe I want to move the map over. Maybe I don't really need these fields in my header, so I might move those and add some more pertinent ones to the header. So I'm just having a little preview of my system, and then I'm going to go back into my solution to make those customizations. I already have it open, so I'm just going to go back in here. See how I'm on the forms. I'm going to click account. This is going to open up the editing page for my form. I'll expand it for you. And this is still that same classic form here for edits. That hasn't changed yet. So you can do some drag and drops. It's pretty easy to make form edits. So let's just say that map view. Remember how I said it didn't have, or sorry, that there was too much white space and maybe I want to move the map here. I can do that just by clicking on this map section and dragging it over here. Whoops. You can also sometimes use the up, down, side keys, arrows of your keyboard to move things around. It doesn't always work as well, but just in case the drag and drop isn't working for you, you can also do that. So I move my map view down here. The other thing I mentioned was the fields in the header. So right now I'm selected on the body of the form. There's two ways I can get at the header. I can go up here and just double click and see now I'm in the header. Also, if for any reason it's a bit slow for that, you can also select up here in the ribbon between body, header, footer, and then the navigation, which is on the side here. So just a couple ways to get at it. So for me, I don't think the annual revenue and number of employees is required in the header. What you want in the header is something that stays on the page regardless of how you scroll. So going back to my CRM form, if I scroll down the page, I lose the other fields, but my header usually stays in there. So I want to have more relevant information for me. I'm going to remove annual revenue. I can do this by either selecting and hitting remove or selecting and hitting the delete key on my keyboard. So another two ways to do that. But I want to add some more stuff in here. Now, I think the account number may be good to have in my header and maybe the relationship type. So to do that, I have all my fields available here. You'll notice too at the top, it defaults to select to only show unused fields. So if I already have a field on a form, if I have already added one of the fields here onto this form, it won't show up in this list. It doesn't mean it's missing. It just means I can unselect and get all my fields back. You can technically put the same field numerous times on the same form. That's no problem. So I had mentioned putting the account number. So I'm going to take that, drag it over here, as well as the relationship type. I'll scroll down to my R's, put that over here. Always click Save to make sure you don't lose any of your edits. And if anyone has really been looking at the page here, you'll notice when I go back to my body, I also have those fields here. So I have relationship type, I have account number. If I don't need them here since they're going to be in the header always, I'm actually going to remove them here to save some space and clean up my form. So again, I can select, click delete on my keyboard, or I can select. Sometimes it doesn't like to click, which is why I try to give these little tips. Select, and then hit remove. Again, I've done some changes. I'm going to save it. So I've saved my changes. Nothing is happening on the user interface side until I publish these changes. So always remember, if you make a change, you need to publish that out. So I can actually publish form changes right from this page here, just using this button here. You do have to save before you publish. If I hadn't saved and there were changes on the form and I hit publish, it would actually give me a notification to say there's unsaved changes. So it does help to remind you of those. I'm going to publish. And then once that's done publishing, I can go back into my user interface here. I can hit F5 or refresh the screen here. And now you can see my changes. So I no longer have relationship type and account number in the section here. It's now up in the header here. So pretty quick and simple customization to the form. Now, let's say we wanted to add a new field. So, for example, for accounts, maybe we like to mark what risk they're at. You know, if it's a low, medium, high, obviously higher risk will get more attention. You know, maybe it's something because they have a lot of complaints or a lot of cases open or something like that. There's two ways I could add a field right now. I can actually add a new field right from this form editor. So if you look to the right here, my list of fields, there's actually a button to add a new field. So while you're making form customizations, you can also add new fields from here. It opens up the new field creation page, and I can go ahead here. So that's one way to do it. But let's say I hadn't opened up my form editor. I'm going to go back to my solution, which I still have open as a page. I'm going to go to fields. And this is blank only because I didn't add any existing fields, remember? But I can create a new one from here. So I'm going to go new, and this will pop up on the same creation page. So my display name, this is the display name that the users will see. I'm going to call this risk. Field requirement being optional. Business recommended, we'll just put that little blue plus sign next to it to say, hey, maybe you want to fill this in. Business required puts that red asterisk, and it requires the user to fill that field in before they can even save the record. So that's just something to know. If it's actually required and you want users to be filling it in first thing, make it business required. If it's optional, it doesn't force them to fill it in. Field security. This just relates to some other security profiles. If I enable field security, what this does is it allows me to show this field only to specific users that would be part of the security profile. So you can show the value, you can select whether they can edit it or not. For this type of field, I wouldn't really need to, but some people think about that for financial fields, so anything with dollar value in it that maybe only certain people should be allowed to see, that is when you'd want to enable field security. Auditing, this just enables or disables this field to be part of the auditing. And then we want to get into our field type here. So there are a lot of data types, from your text, option sets, whole numbers, currency, lookup values, date, time, so forth. For this one, because I'm just going with a pick list, basically, a low, medium, high, I'm going to select option set. There are two things you could do with an option set. You'll notice here it says use an existing option set to no. If I hit yes, oops, this gives me access to what's called a global option set. The reason you would use a global option set is if you want to reuse this same option set in a different entity. So if I were to create a risk option set and say use existing option set, yes, and then hit new, I'd be creating a global option set, as you see when I hover over it. This would then allow me to reuse this field and the values within in a different entity like contact, let's say. So it makes it so that you don't have to recreate the same field, and then if you ever had to do any other edits, you'd be editing two different fields. Because this risk option set is only going to be relatable to accounts, I don't need to do that. So I'm going to click no, which means this option set only resides in my account entity. And if I were to want to use this somewhere else, I would actually have to create a brand new risk field. Okay. So I have an option set, and then I need to add my values to it. One thing to keep in mind when you're dealing with option sets is if you ever want to sort by them, they would either sort alphabetically or numerically. So for something like low, medium, high, I might want to put a number in front of that because it sorts by the label, not by this value here. This is for backend. So for the label, if I ever wanted to have a view that sorts, high, medium to low, I would want to put a number in front of that, because alphabetically it may not sort how I want it to. So I'm going to go 1 is high. I'm going to add another item. I'm going to say 2 is medium, and then 1 more, 3 low. Once I've done that, I can save and close. I can save just so it creates the field, and I can make further edits. So it's now creating this field in my system. With an option set, you can assign a default value. So whenever a record is created, it would assign the default value. If I have unassigned, it means it leaves it blank, and then a user would assign it. Because this is a risk dropdown, I'm going to leave it blank, and then however the organization would use it, these values would be assigned accordingly. So I've created this field. I'm now going to exit out of this, and you can see I have this new risk field in my solution. I also want to add this to the form now. So I can go back to my form, open up the account form, scroll on the right here to my risk, right here, and I can either drag it into the body here, or as we did before, I could add it to the header. The header, I believe, only allows 4 fields, so I could edit this to have 4, but I don't really need it in the header, so I'm just going to leave it here. Remember, I can save and publish from here. If I don't do that, I can just save and close, which means nothing's published out to the user just yet. And then once I've done all my changes in my solution, I could publish everything from here as well. And notice I have the publish all. So if I go publish all, it's going to take any of the customizations I currently have in this specific solution and publish them out to the user. So I go publish all, and sometimes this does take a bit of time. Just keep in mind it is pushing out changes to the users. If you do ever end up though where it looks like it is just frozen, you can refresh and then check whether it actually published out or not. That does sometimes happen. I'll go back to my account page. I'll do a quick refresh. And then here's that risk field. And here's my drop-down values. Perfect. Okay, so one other easier customization that a lot of companies will do is to the views. And the view is sometimes referred to as report, Excel, list, all different terminology toward it. But this is a Microsoft view. It is just like your Excel list. It has your columns, it has the data in each row, and you can click in to see more information. Anything that's blue, such as this phone number, an email address, these are active links. So if I click on here, obviously it's going to open up the account. If I click on the phone number, it's going to try and launch my whatever phone system I would have on my laptop. If I was clicking on an email, let's say I go in, it's going to try and launch my Outlook. Sorry, that would be if I was on a contact. So if I went into this contact, again, blue link, and I wanted to email her, you can see I can actually email right from the system. So it's very similar to any other hyperlink you'd have online. So if I want to customize a view now, so I'm going to go back to my accounts, I can either customize any of the existing system views, which are a lot of these, or I can create a new one. So I'm going back to my solution. I'm going to views. I did add one view, I believe, right? Active accounts. So I could edit this. I could also use this as a template so I don't have to create something from scratch. So that's another reason to use existing views, and then you would just save as and give them a different name, and then that way you're not overwriting the current one, but you're using it as a template to create a new one. So I could create brand new from here. I could also open this up and go save as, and then that way I already have some columns available here. So that's 2 ways to do it. If I create brand new, I'm setting everything up from scratch. I have to give it a name. So let's say active customers. It adds the account name just to have one column, of course, but I would have to add additional ones. So I can go here and say, okay, I want the account name, maybe I want their primary contact, and the city and province that they're in. So I can see here through my list of fields within account. So I'm going to go address 1, city, state, province. I'm going to scroll down to find the primary contact, add that in as well. And then maybe I also want to know the owner of the record too. So I'm going to add owner. I'm going to go OK. And then I have them here. I can move them around just by selecting and then using the arrows over here. I can also make these wider by selecting and then going change properties and then increasing the pixels. And maybe I forgot to add a column. That's fine. I can just select again and go add column. And let's say I also want to add the account number. Forgot to add that in. It's over here. I want to move it over. So again, selecting it, moving the arrow, and I might make it a bit bigger, just so nothing gets cut off. Okay, so I've created my view. I've given it a name. I've added the columns. I am missing one thing though. I haven't told the system what information I want brought into this view, because as of right now, there's no criteria whatsoever, so it won't filter out anything. To do that, very easy, just edit filter criteria. This is where I'm telling the system what is it that I want to bring into this view. So I want to bring anything with the status of active for sure. So I can either scroll down or press S on my keyboard, a little quicker. So status equals, and I'm going to select active versus inactive. So see. And then I only want to show the accounts where the relationship type is customer, because this is a customer view. So I'm going to scroll down, relationship type. So that was that drop-down field we played around with earlier and added to the form header. I'm going to say relationship type equals, and then again, I'm going over here. It's going to show me all the options available within this option set. So see, I have consultant, customer, investor, vendors. I only want those that are customer. Go OK. You can add more than one value if you want. I'm going to go OK. So now I've applied a filter criteria to this. I can just save and close from here. And now I have another view added to my solution. Now remember, I've done some customizations. I haven't published this yet, so a user won't see this on the user interface just yet. I can though, however, go publish all and push that out and have a look at it. Any of the views, forms, fields that you customize in the back end here is for the system. So some people might be familiar with personalized views or even personalized charts, personal dashboards. Those are all specific to a user as the user creates them. They're not system-wide. You can share personalized dashboards, views, charts with other users, but just know anything done in the back end here is for the whole system and for the users. But if you do a personalized view, it's just for yourself, and then if you share it with anyone else. So now that I've published that new view, I'm going to go back to my CRM user interface. I'm going to refresh it after I've done that. And then let's see if that view is available to me. By default, I always see active accounts because I've set that as my default view for this entity. But let's see, right here, I have active customers. I can select this to change the view. There you can see I've got my account, the account number, if they have a primary contact, city, state, province, and then who's the owner of that record. If I wanted this view to be my default view whenever I go into an account, the users would just have to select and then hit this pin. So that's not something administrators do, that's something the users themselves can do. So I've basically done some pretty generic but helpful customizations to an entity. These are kind of the starting ones that we suggest for administrators just because it's the easiest way to cater to your organization's needs, to the business processes within. And it can just be simple label changes. It can be adding a field here or there to capture the right data. It can be changing a view just to make it more relevant to your users. It can be creating a new one or several with different sorting criterias. And the reason an administrator would do this is one, to put that out to all users, especially if they have similar needs, because you could have users creating personal views and they're all creating basically the same personal view. That puts not necessarily too much of a resource constraint on the system, but it does add up and it's unnecessary. So we've covered kind of the basic things right now. I did mention that we'll talk about processes, so a little bit of automation, just with business process flows as well as workflows or Microsoft Flow. So I'm going to exit out of this solution just to show you where that is or where people are used to seeing processes. So I'm just going to minimize this. I'm going to go back to my settings area that it popped out. So again, when you hit the gearbox and go advanced settings, it pops out this page here that most people who do customizations are familiar with. And there's a processes area here. This will give me all the processes by default, all my activated ones. This is anything from a workflow, action, business process flow. If you have dialogues from older systems, those would be in here as well. So this is one area where you can add, you can edit or create a brand new process. But similar to what we were doing previously with the account, you probably want to include this in your solution. And then that way it'll be very easy to take whatever customizations you've done and move them from a sandbox to a production or another environment. Right here on the left, you'll see I have a processes section. Very similar to the entities. I can add an existing one. So if I was going to edit an existing one in the system or create a brand new one. To start, I'm going to do an edit to the standard lead to opportunity business process flow. And what I'm referring to is I'm going to go back into my CRM. I'm going to go to my lead. I'm going to create a new lead just to show you here. Most people in CRM should be relatively familiar with this. Is this lead to opportunity process. It comes out of the box. It's pretty standard. You can make new ones and then just deactivate these, or you can just edit the existing to cater a bit more towards your sales process. So it does look a bit different in unified interface compared to the classic web version. But if I click on here, you'll see for the qualify stage in the lead, I can select if it's an existing contact or account, purchase time frame, estimated budget, purchase process. That's a pretty standard one for the lead to opportunity, because basically what you want to do with the lead is qualify it or disqualify it as quick as possible and move into your opportunity and develop from there. So I just have one stage right now in my lead, and then these are part of the opportunity if I were to qualify. So some pretty standard fields here. So let's just say there's a bit too much in this qualify stage because I just want to know if they're an existing contact or account. That's all I really care about. Otherwise, the information should be in here, whether I've typed it in manually or it's come from a web lead form or imported from a trade show list, something like that. So I just kind of want to clean this up because I want to make it as simple as possible for my salespeople. So to do that, I'm going back into my solution. I'm going to add existing. Again, I'm in my processes, so I'm going to add an existing one. And I'm going to find the lead to opportunity. If you don't know the name of your business process flow, it's very easy to find. You'll see here it says lead to opportunity sales process. So if that's been relabeled, just look at it here and you can find that in the back end. Got a lot in here. Oops. So right here, lead to opportunity sales process. Go OK. It's going to add that to my solution file. And then I'm going to open it to do some edits. If you're not familiar with business process flows, we do have other webinars already available on our YouTube channel that go over that. So feel free to check it out or send me a message and I can just send you some quick documentation on it. So here's my lead to opportunity sales process. You can see here I have lead in the qualify stage and then it jumps into opportunity. So this is a totally different entity. That is the standard process flow for sales in Microsoft Dynamics 365. When you qualify a lead, it becomes an opportunity. It will also create a contact and account record for you unless you've specified an existing one. So I'm going to open up my lead qualify stage. So remember how I said there's a bit too much on here. I don't care that salespeople need to fill this out in the lead stage. I just want to know if it's a qualified lead or not, and then they gather more information in the opportunity side of things. So I'm actually just going to clean this up. I'm just selecting some of these options on here and I'm just going to remove them. So select, hit delete, It's going to confirm, yes, I want to delete that. Bit of a pain that it closes every time. Just something to deal with for now. I'm going to remove estimated budget. They might not know that at this stage. And purchase process. Go OK. So right now, my lead qualify stage is just going to say whether it's an existing contact or existing account, because then they can link it to that existing record in the CRM. So I'm good there. I can check out the other stages too in the opportunity develop, propose, and close as well, just by expanding this. You'll see here I have, whether they capture a customer need, the proposed solution. They've identified stakeholders. That's more of a yes/no. If they've identified competitors, more of a yes/no. And these are just meant to either give the salespeople something to input or as a reminder for them to do these things. So identify stakeholders, that could just be a check mark, like yes, they've done it, but within the opportunity themselves, they might have actually put in who those stakeholders are. So it's kind of a reminder for them, but also says you need to complete this task in order to have a well-rounded opportunity record. Could look at the opportunity proposed stage. It's got your standard things. They've identified the sales team, they've developed a proposal, they've done an internal review, and then presented the proposal. In the close stage, pretty standard, presented final proposal, and then confirmed decision date. Moving through these stages allows managers to know where an opportunity is, of course. And then once things are completed here, they would obviously mark the opportunity as won or lost. So I've just done some very minor edits, removing stuff, cleaning it up. Once I've done that, I can validate just to make sure everything is in line. The system will warn me if something just doesn't work quite well. It obviously says successful, and then I'm going to update, which is saving it. Once I've saved that, I can actually go back to my lead. Again, I'm refreshing the page because I've done changes. I'm going to look at that qualify stage. And now I just have whether it's an existing contact or account. You may have noticed I did not have to publish anything with the process. So that is one difference when you're dealing with a process here. Once you have saved those changes, that's it. There's no publish out to the system. It's already been done. So I've done my changes. I can exit out of this. And I already have that in here. So just to show you what that looks like quickly, let's just say I have interested in product. Put myself in here. And I can fill in these or not because these ones are not marked as mandatory. The more information that you get at this time, the better, because what happens is when I qualify this lead, it takes this information, it adds it into the contact and or account record that gets created at that time. So that's just something to keep in mind. The more information you do gather in a lead, the better. Otherwise, you're going to end up filling those things in at a later date. So I filled in my name, my title, email. Maybe I'll fill in some of my company details. And maybe that's all I have. I'm saving this. I could fill these in if I had an existing contact or account. You can also dock this because I know sometimes it's a pain to keep clicking this in and out. I can dock it so it stays over here and I work the form here. And then I can go next stage. But you'll notice when I go next stage, it says there's no opportunity. That's because I haven't actually qualified this lead, which allows the system to do its own automation and makes their job a little easier. So I've filled in what I can, and then I can go qualify. And I just want to show you quickly how it moves through that business process flow we were editing and how it jumps to a different entity. If you create a new business process flow or edit an existing one, you can add in even more entities. So you're not just restricted to the out-of-the-box functionality that comes with it. So usually by default, yes, it goes lead to opportunity. But let's say you go lead opportunity and then you have another stage that's meant to create a quote. You can actually add quote in here as well. So instead of it going just lead opportunity and then you close out the opportunity, I could have it jump to quote and then back to opportunity. And the way you do that, and I'll just show you very quickly, is you jump back into your process. So again, I'm in my solution. I can open up existing or create new. It's the same thing here. And I would add in another entity and another stage. Just gonna let it load up. Okay. So when you're editing, creating new, when you're adding things in, you can add a stage, you can add a condition. Condition allows you to do some branching. So if this or that type thing, and you can go to different stages depending on what condition you put in there. You can add data steps, workflows. That's the other nice improvement with business process flows over the years is you can trigger workflows right from in here, which is nice. I'm going to add another stage. I'm going to add it right in here. So by default, it did select the opportunity entity. But if you notice on the right side here, I have my properties. So I actually don't want it to be part of the opportunity entity. I want to go to quotes. So I'm selecting the quote entity. I'm calling this stage name quote. Very self-explanatory. I'm going to apply. What this will do is when the user qualifies a lead, as we saw previously, it'll move into the opportunity. Once they've done the proper work for this stage of the opportunity and they go to next stage, it's actually going to jump into quote. This is nice because it then loads the quote form for them. And then when they've done the quote, they can move to next stage and it'll jump back into the opportunity. And what's nice is these will then be related because this quote that was created at this time is linked to this opportunity. And then let's just say you need to do an order. That's another entity you can add in here. So you can really scale out your business process flows to meet the organization's needs. You can do the same thing in the customer service side because the cases do come with an out-of-the-box business process flow, but you can expand on that as well. Now, before we end things, I did want to talk a little bit about workflows because I had that up on there and I mentioned Microsoft Flows. I will apply the changes and save this. So again, update, saving. Oh, perfect. Here's a great example of a validation fail. So there is one error on this page. Again, this is because I didn't add anything to this stage. So that was a boo-boo on my part, which is very good. The system catches that because you can't have a blank stage here. So I'm actually just going to remove this, make it easy. Go OK, and then update. Perfect example of why you can use validate before you try and save and the system throws you the error. Okay, so back to workflows. Anyone who's done customizations in Microsoft CRM or Dynamics 365 should be relatively familiar with workflows. That allows you to do automation in the back end. It can be triggered off certain changes in the system. They can be on demand for users to run at whatever time they need to. But I wanted to show you what happens now when you try and do workflows in the upgraded system. So let's see if it does it right from here. I'm going to go new. I won't go too in depth with this. We do have webinars or past webinars on our YouTube channel, of course, on how to make workflows. But you'll notice when I hit workflow, it now comes up with this message. We recommend using Microsoft Flow instead of background workflows. Click here to start building flows. So this is where Microsoft is heading, it's with Microsoft Flow. So you're going to see less and less standard workflows as you would be used to in the system because there's Microsoft Flow now. This is basically an add-on product with Dynamics, and what's really nice is it has so many connectors. It makes your automation even that much easier. It can connect to Outlook, of course, and any other Microsoft product, but it also has other connectors to things like non-Microsoft products. So I highly recommend just kind of getting to know a little bit more about Microsoft Flow. It is its own topic and can take an hour just to go through an example, so I won't be doing that today. But if you do have any questions on it, please feel free to email me. I'll send you a quick link just to learn more about it, and you can even do some practice. This does come with any Dynamics 365 trial you may have spun up or sandbox you have. It's a really great tool, and it's certainly the way that Microsoft's heading. So I just wanted to mention that you know, everyone loves workflows for automation. but we're moving away from the standard workflow you're used to in, your CRMs, and we're moving towards this Microsoft Flow, which is part of that Power Platform that I've mentioned. So if you do have access to creating processes, you can actually get to it right from here and click on the links, but also feel free to send me an email. I have some quick documentation that can help you get started with Microsoft Flow. Okay, so moving back to my solution, I've done my solution. I can save everything, and I can also publish all my changes. From there, I am good to go. I can either keep this as is, and then my changes are in the system, or I can export this and move it from a sandbox, in this case, to a production system. And that's the most standard way that people do move changes from one environment to another. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to turn it back to Tia here. We will have some time for some question and answers, so I'm just going to mute myself while we review those. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Angelina. So if there are any questions, please begin to type them. I have received a few that just came through. Type them into the question box for us, and we will do our best to answer them for you. So as you do that, I would like to inform you that if you want to learn more about D365 subjects or register for future webinars, please visit our website, crmdynamics.com/learning academy. Now, as I can see here, there are a few questions. Number one is, where do you go to customize your entity?
Where do you go to customize your entity? Okay, so that would be the same area that we were in. I'll just show my screen again here. Okay, so there are two ways to go about it. One being if you're in the system here, and this does depend on whether you have system administrator customization roles, so not all users can do that, but you would have the gearbox up here. You go to advanced settings. This brings you into the classic web version of your settings area. Click to drop that down. You can do customizations or solutions, but if I go into customizations, I can go customize the system. This is the default solution, so it will contain everything that's currently in my system. So that's one way to go about it. It's not recommended. It's actually better to do the solution that we did, which is going into your solutions and creating a brand new one there. But that's how you get at it. So you'd go into your entities and then select whichever entity you want to edit and go from there.
Great, thank you. I have a second question. I'm considering joining a Dynamics user group in order to learn about customizations and other parts of the platform. Is joining a user group a good idea?
Oh, user groups, yes. So it depends on what your goals are. There is a lot of content out there to allow you to learn do your own self-paced learning. Our webinars, there's Microsoft Learn platform. So again, if you have questions on that, send me an email and I'll send you some quick documentations that I send to most people that are looking to get started with it. So there is already a lot of online content available to you for free. But the Dynamics user groups are very helpful. It connects you with a bunch of people who either have the same problems and questions as you or who have solutions to those. So I do recommend it. Sometimes there's a price that comes with that. So that's something to weigh the pros and cons with. But I suggest at least starting out with the available online resources that are free, and then going from there if you really start to get going and want to expand your network, because the user groups are great for that. They put on conferences and other training sessions and other webinars as well. Just know there's usually a price attached to that.
Excellent. Good to know. Thanks for the insight, Angelina. I have a couple more questions. The next one would be, how do we publish from Sandbox CRM to production CRM?
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so that's what I was mentioning with creating a solution file. And that is how you would move customizations from one environment to another. So the way you would be doing that is by creating that solution file as we did in the demo. And then once you've published all those changes, you would export that file, that solution file, and then import it into your production instance. And there's lots of online resources that kind of give you an easy step-by-step for that. But that is the reason to use solution files, so that you can move customizations from a sandbox into a production.
Great. Last questions. We have, besides the personal charts and dashboards, are there any customizations that can be done by regular users instead of having a system admin to do the work?
Yes. So what we went through was the backend system administrator access, which publishes out customizations to all users. I mean, obviously depending on security roles and data access and all that. But there are personal customizations that users can do. I had mentioned personalized view, so that is one way to have personal customizations available to you as a user, and that's done with the advanced find. If you do a search on our YouTube channel, we do have advanced find training videos for that. It's very simple, and it's very much similar to how I had set it up in today's demo. And then what that does is a view personal to the user. They can share it to other users if they want, but they can set it up to show the data they need, the columns, all that customization we went through. The only key thing to keep in mind is you still are restricted by your security role and what data you can see. So if I was a sales user whose security role only allows me to see leads that are owned by me as a user, I could set up a personal view that shows all leads. That's the filter criteria. The system still won't show me all leads because my security role still trumps that. So just keep that in mind. You can also do personal charts and personal dashboards as well.
Okay, great. So I'm looking at the time check here. We only have a few minutes to spare. Do you have time to take one more question or?
Yeah, let's shoot.
Okay, so last one. When you create or edit a solution, once you publish it, it will only change what you imported, right? And won't modify anything unless it was imported.
Okay, so I'm not sure if this relates to moving a solution to a new environment, but yes, in the environment you've created that solution, any changes you've done within that solution itself, that's what you're publishing out, because those are the only changes you've included in the solution. So if you take that solution and import it into another environment, it's only taking those things that you've added to it. So even if I have in my solution file added, let's just say I added the account as we did in the demo, and I added all the fields, but I only edited one field. When I export that solution, it still includes all the fields I added to the solution itself, but since I didn't do any changes, when I import it into another environment, no changes are done. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Even if you add other pieces into your solution, if you haven't done any changes to them and you import it into another environment, there still won't be any changes done, and the environment will keep whatever customization it already has. Hopefully that helps answer the question.
I hope so. So thank you. Thank you so much, Angelina. And I wanted to thank everyone and Angelina, our senior consultant as well, for being here today. As we're closing our webinar, please note to all that I will be emailing out the recorded versions to all attendees. And then please subscribe to our YouTube channel to view any additional information on training in regards to Microsoft D365. Thank you again for your participations and have a dynamic day.